Imagine a playlist where each video is a window into another dimension. As you scroll, you'll encounter worlds where time flows backwards, where thoughts become tangible, and where dreams and nightmares walk side by side. We've curated a selection of stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew. Buckle up for a ride through the bizarre, the uncanny, and the inexplicable. Welcome to a world where reality is just another channel to surf. Imagine, if you will, a world in ruins, a landscape where the remnants of civilization crumble beneath an unforgiving sky. In this desolate realm, hope is a rare commodity, and survival is a daily struggle. But there's something far more sinister lurking in the shadows of this broken world, a force that threatens not just the body, but the very soul of humanity. Welcome, dear listeners, to a tale of faith twisted into madness, of survival in the face of unspeakable evil. This is the story of Cult of the New Dawn. Our tale begins 5 years after the fall of civilization. The world as we knew it ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. A series of cascading disasters that brought humanity to its knees. In the aftermath, pockets of survivors cling to existence, scavenging what they can from the ruins of the old world. Among these survivors is the Thompson family. Jack, a former construction worker, his wife Sarah, once a school teacher, and their teenage children, Alex and Emma. For years, they've managed to eke out a living in the remains of a small suburban town, staying under the radar and avoiding conflict with other groups of survivors. But their quiet existence is about to be shattered by a force they never saw coming. It starts with whispers carried on the wind, stories of a group calling themselves the New Dawn. First, the Thompsons dismiss these tales as just another desperate attempt by survivors to find meaning in the chaos. But as travelers pass through their town, the stories become more frequent, more detailed, and more disturbing. The New Dawn, they learn, is a cult that believes the apocalypse was a divine cleansing. In their twisted theology, only the worthy were meant to survive, and it's their sacred duty to purify the world of those they deem unworthy. Jack and Sarah try to shield their children from these dark rumors, but Alex and Emma are old enough to sense the growing unease. The family begins to take precautions, stockpiling supplies and planning escape routes just in case. Their fears are realized on a cold autumn morning when the first New Dawn scouts appear on the outskirts of town. Dressed in white robes stained with dirt and blood, they carry crude weapons and preach their gospel of cleansing to anyone who will listen. Most of the townspeople are wary, keeping their distance, but a few, worn down by years of hardship and desperate for any kind of hope, begin to listen. The Thompsons watch with growing horror as neighbors they've known for years fall under the cult's spell. As the cult's influence grows, so does the danger. The New Dawn's message becomes more aggressive, their tactics more violent. Those who refuse to join are branded as impure and threatened with cleansing. One night, the Thompsons are awakened by screams. From their window, they see their neighbor's house in flames, cultists surrounding it, chanting as the family inside begs for mercy. It's then that Jack and Sarah realize they can no longer stay. In the dead of night, they gather what supplies they can carry and slip out of town. Their plan is to head north, to a rumored safe haven in the mountain. But the journey is fraught with danger. The roads are treacherous, filled with bandits and wild animals. And always there's the fear that the cult is not far behind. For days they travel, sleeping in abandoned buildings and scavenging for food. Alex and Emma, despite their fear, show a resilience that makes their parents proud. But the strain of constant vigilance takes its toll on all of them. On the 5th day of their journey, they encounter another family fleeing the cult. The Millers, John, Maria, and their young son Timmy, join forces with the Thompson. For a brief moment, there's a sense of hope. Strength in numbers, shared resources, the comfort of not being alone in this nightmare. But their relief is short-lived. The very next day, they spot a column of white-robed figures on the horizon. The cult has found them. What follows is a desperate chase across a ravaged landscape. Two families push themselves to the limit, running through forests, wading across rivers, always with the sound of chanting growing closer. Just when it seems they might escape, disaster strikes. While crossing a decaying bridge, John Miller falls, injuring his leg. The cult is closing in, and they all know they can't outrun them with John injured. It's Maria who makes the heart-wrenching decision. She tells the Thompsons to go on, to take Timmy with them. She'll stay with John, buy them time. Despite protests, the Thompsons know it's the only way. With tears in their eyes, they take Timmy and run, the boys' cries echoing in their ears. As night falls, they find shelter in an old farmhouse. It's there, huddled in the darkness, that they hear the distant sounds of chanting, punctuated by screams. Jack holds Sarah close, both of them silently weeping for the friends they left behind. The next morning brings a grim discovery. Carved into the bark of a tree near the farmhouse is a message. The impure cannot hide. A new dawn comes for all. Realizing the cult is still on their trail, the Thompsons push on. Days blur together in a haze of exhaustion and fear. They travel by night, hide by day, always looking over their shoulders. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, they see it. The mountain range that marks their destination. Hope surges through them, giving them renewed strength for the final push. But the cult has one last card to play. As the Thompsons begin their ascent into the mountains, they find the path blocked by a group of white-robed figures. At their head stands a man with wild eyes and a cruel smile, cult's leader. "You've led us on quite a chase," he says, his voice dripping with false kindness. "But now it's time to embrace the new dawn. Join us and be cleansed." Jack steps forward, placing himself between his family and the cultist. "We'll never join you," says, his voice steady despite his fear. The leader's smile fades. "Then you leave us no choice. The impure must be cleansed." What happens next is a blur of violence and desperation. Jack and Sarah fight with everything they have, protecting their children and young Timmy. Alex and Emma, despite their parents' protests, join the fight, showing a courage beyond their years. In the chaos, Emma manages to slip away. She returns moments later with a horde of infected, victims of the apocalypse that the cult so reveres. The infected fall upon cultists and Thompsons alike, but in the confusion, family manages to escape. Battered and exhausted, they finally reach the safe haven they've been seeking. It's a community of survivors who have banded together, creating a fortress in the mountains. As they're welcomed inside, the Thompsons finally allow themselves to feel safe. But even as they begin to settle into their new home, they know that the world outside is still full of dangers. Cult of the New Dawn is still out there, along with countless other threats. Yet they face the future with determination, knowing that together they can survive anything. And so, dear listeners, we leave the Thompson family to their hard-earned peace. But let their tale be a warning. In times of great upheaval, when the world seems to have lost all sense, beware those who offer simple answers to complex problems. For in the darkness of despair, it's all too easy for faith to become fanaticism, for the promise of a new dawn to lead only to a deeper night. Remember, in this world or any other, greatest threat to humanity is often humanity itself. Sleep well, and may your own dawn bring only light, not the shadows of twisted belief. In the desolate wastelands of a world forever changed, where the remnants of civilization crumble beneath an ashen sky, there are places that time has forgotten, places where the veil between past and present, life and death, grows thin. Tonight, we invite you to journey into one such place, where the echoes of the past refuse to fade, and the living must confront the ghosts of a tragedy long buried. Welcome to the Echoes of the Past. Our story begins with Jake, a lone scavenger eking out a meager existence in the ruins of what was once the American Midwest. Been 20 years since the Great Flash, catastrophic nuclear disaster that wiped out most of humanity and left the world a toxic, irradiated wasteland. Jake is a survivor, hardened by years of solitude and the constant struggle for resources. His days are spent combing through the ruins of abandoned towns and cities, searching for anything of value: food, medicine, fuel, or the rare pre-disaster tech that still fetches a high price in the scattered settlements of survivors. On this particular day, Jake's wanderings have led him to the outskirts of a small town he's never encountered before. Strange, he thinks, as he's mapped most of this area over the years. The town seems to shimmer in the distance, like a mirage in the heat haze. As Jake approaches, he notices something odd. Unlike the other ruins he's explored, this town appears eerily intact. The buildings stand whole, their paint barely faded. Streets are clear of the usual debris. It's as if the apocalypse simply passed this place by. Curiosity overcoming caution, Jake enters the town. The silence is oppressive, broken only by the crunch of his boots on the pavement and the whisper of wind through empty streets. Yet shake the feeling that he's being watched. Jake's first stop is a small convenience store. To his amazement, the shelves are fully stocked with pre-disaster goods. His scavenger's instinct takes over, and he begins to fill his backpack with supplies. As he reaches for a can of food, he feels a sudden chill, as if a cold wind has blown through the store. Then he hears it, a whisper, so faint he almost misses it. "Help us." Jake spins around, his hand instinctively going to the pistol at his hip. But the store is empty. He's alone, or is he? As he steps back onto the street, the town seems different. The colors are muted, the air thick with an otherworldly fog. And there, at the end of the street, Jake sees a figure. A woman, dressed in clothes from another time, staring at him with eyes that seem to glow with an inner light. Jake blinks, and the woman is gone. But now he can hear voices, whispers carried on the wind, fragments of conversations, cries of fear and pain. The town is coming alive around him, but not in any way he's ever experienced before. Driven by a mixture of fear and fascination, Jake begins to explore further. Each building he enters tells a story, reveals a piece of the puzzle. In the local diner, he sees ghostly patrons frozen in their final moments, forks halfway to mouths that will never taste food again. In the school, translucent children sit at desks, their faces masks of confusion and terror. As night falls, the activity intensifies. The streets fill with spectral figures, all seemingly unaware of Jake's presence. They go about their daily routines, a macabre pantomime of normal life. But occasionally, one will turn and look directly at Jake, their eyes pleading, accusing. In the town square, Jake encounters the woman he saw earlier. This time she speaks to him directly. "You shouldn't be here," she says, her voice echoing as if from a great distance. "This is our place, our prison." Jake, his voice shaking, asks, "What happened here?" The woman's face contorts with pain and anger. "They told us we were safe, that the reactors were secure. They lied. When the alarm sounded, it was already too late. We all died that day, but we didn't know it yet." As she speaks, the scene around them changes. Jake watches in horror as the peaceful town is engulfed in chaos. Sirens wail, people run screaming through the streets, and a sickly green mist begins to creep along the ground. "We're trapped here," the woman continues, reliving our last day over and over, unable to move on, unable to forget. Jake, overwhelmed by the tragedy unfolding before him, asks, "How can I help?" The woman's eyes flash with a dangerous light. "You can join us," she hisses, reaching for him with spectral hands. Jake recoils, suddenly aware of the danger he's in. The other ghosts have noticed him now, and they're converging on his position, their faces twisted with a mixture of pain and hunger. He runs, the angry howls of the dead echoing behind him. Through streets that twist and change, past buildings that flicker between pristine and ruined, Jake flees. Town itself seems alive, trying to trap him, keep him there. As he nears the town's edge, the attacks intensify. Ghostly hands claw at him, spectral voices scream in his ears. The very air seems to thicken, making each step a struggle. Just when it seems he can't go on, Jake bursts through the town's boundary. He collapses on the barren ground beyond, gasping for breath. When he looks back, the town is gone. In its place is nothing but ruins, the same as any other abandoned place in this wasteland. Jake knows what he saw, what he experienced, and as he gathers himself to continue his journey, he can't shake the feeling that a part of him was left behind in that ghostly town. In the days that follow, Jake is haunted by his experience. He sees faces in the shadows, hears whispers on the wind. The ghosts of that town have left their mark on him. Unable to forget, Jake begins to search for information about the town and its fate. In the scattered communities he visits, he asks questions, piecing together the tragic history. He learns that the town, once called Hope Springs, was home to a secret government research facility. They were working on new nuclear technologies, promising clean, safe energy for all. But something went wrong. A containment breach, a cascade of failures, and in the space of a few hours, an entire community was wiped out. The official story was that the town had been safely evacuated. Truth, as Jake now knows, is far more horrifying. Armed with this knowledge, Jake makes a decision. Can't leave those souls trapped in their endless cycle of death and despair. He begins to gather supplies: salt, iron, sacred herbs, anything that the Wasteland's folklore says might help against spirits. Months later, Jake returns to the site of Hope Springs. This time, he's prepared. As the ghostly town materializes around him, he stands his ground. The spirits appear, angry at first, but Jake's determination gives them pause. He speaks to them, telling them the truth of what happened, how they were betrayed, how their deaths were covered up. He offers them something they've been denied for so long: acknowledgement of their suffering, validation of their anger. For hours, Jake listens to their stories. He bears witness to their pain, their fear, their regrets. And as the spectral sun begins to rise on another day in this timeless purgatory, something changes. The anger in the spirit's eyes begins to fade, replaced by a weary acceptance. The woman Jake first encountered approaches him, but this time there's no malice in her gaze. "Thank you," she says softly, "for remembering us, caring." One by one, the spirits begin to fade, not violently or in fear, but peacefully, as if finally allowing themselves to rest. The town around Jake shimmers and fades, the buildings crumbling into the ruins they've been for decades. As the last of the spirits disappear, Jake finds himself standing alone in the true remains of Hope Springs. The air feels lighter, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. He knows that the ghosts have moved on, their stories finally told, their existence acknowledged. Jake leaves Hope Springs changed. He carries with him the weight of the town's tragedy, but also a sense of purpose. In this broken world, he's found a new mission: to seek out other places like Hope Springs, other lost souls trapped between worlds, and help them find peace. And so, dear listeners, we leave Jake to his newfound purpose. Remember his tale when you walk among the ruins of the old world. For in those quiet places where the past lingers and the veil grows thin, there may be voices waiting to be heard, stories longing to be told. In this world or any other, the echoes of the past have power. They can haunt us, drive us mad, or if we listen closely, they can teach us and help us heal. The choice, as always, is ours. Sleep well, and may your own ghosts, should you have any, find their peace. In a world ravaged by disease and despair, where the line between humanity and monstrosity blurs with each passing day, we find ourselves on the precipice of a moral abyss. Tonight, we invite you to journey into a realm where the infected are not just mindless creatures, but thinking, feeling beings trapped in a nightmare of their own body. Welcome to a tale of survival, compassion, and the darkest depths of human nature. This is the story of the infected. Our tale begins 5 years after the outbreak of the Nexus virus, a pathogen that brought civilization to its knees. In the ruins of what was once Seattle, a small group of survivors has carved out a precarious existence. They call themselves the Haven, a fitting name for their fortified community nestled in the remains of an old university campus. Among the Haven's leaders is Dr. Eliza Chen, a virologist who has dedicated her life to understanding and hopefully curing the Nexus virus. Alongside her are Marcus, a former soldier whose combat skills have kept the group alive, Sarah, a resourceful engineer who maintains their equipment, and Chris, a young man who has grown up in this post-apocalyptic world. For years, they've fought against the infected, mindless, violent creatures driven by an insatiable hunger. The Haven's policy has always been clear: infected are to be eliminated on sight. It's a harsh rule, but one born from necessity and countless close calls. But everything changes on a routine scavenging mission. Marcus and Chris are exploring an abandoned research facility when they encounter something unprecedented: an infected that speaks. "Please," creature rasps, its diseased flesh a stark contrast to the intelligence in its eyes. "Don't shoot. I'm still me." Shocked and confused, Marcus and Chris bring the infected back to the Haven, much to the alarm of the other survivors. Dr. Chen, however, is fascinated. As she examines the infected, a man who introduces himself as David, she makes a startling discovery. It's a new strain, she explains to the group. The virus has mutated. It still causes physical changes, but it doesn't destroy higher brain functions. They retain their memories, their personalities, their humanity. This revelation sends shockwaves through the Haven. Some, like Sarah, are hopeful. If they're still human inside, maybe we can help them, she argues. Others, like Marcus, are more cautious. They may be human now, but for how long? What happens when they lose control? As the debate rages, more intelligent infected begin to appear. They approach the Haven, not as mindless attackers, but as refugees seeking help. Each has a story, a family they've lost, a life they're desperate to reclaim. Dr. Chen throws herself into studying the new strain, hoping to find a cure. She works tirelessly, using David and the other coherent infected as test subject. But as days turn to weeks, grim reality sets in. Physical progression of the virus can't be stopped. Eventually, these thinking, feeling beings will succumb to violent madness, just like the original infected. The Haven is divided. Some, led by Sarah, advocate for accepting the intelligent infected, arguing that they deserve a chance at what life they have left. Others, with Marcus at the forefront, push for their elimination, seeing them as time bombs waiting to explode. Tensions reach a breaking point when one of the infected, a young woman named Lisa, turns violent without warning. She attacks a Haven resident, nearly killing him before she's subdued. The incident seems to confirm Marcus's fears, and the calls for expulsion or execution of the infected grow louder. But Chris, who has been spending time with the infected, learning their stories, can't accept this. He argues passionately for their humanity, insisting that they can't be abandoned or killed simply for being sick. We're talking about people. Please, people with hopes, dreams, families. We can't just throw them away. As the Haven teeters on the brink of internal conflict, Dr. Chen makes a breakthrough. While she can't cure the virus, she believes she's found a way to slow its progression significantly. With proper medication, the intelligent infected could have years of normal life before succumbing to the virus's final stages. This discovery forces the Haven to make a choice. Do they commit their limited resources to helping these infected individuals, knowing that eventually they'll still lose them? Or do they cut their losses and focus solely on the uninfected survivors? The debate is fierce, with valid arguments on both sides. Marcus argues for practicality, pointing out that resources are already stretched thin. We can barely feed and protect ourselves, he says. How can we take on more people, especially ones who will eventually become a threat? Sarah counters with an appeal to their humanity. If we turn our backs on them, we're no better than the monsters we're fighting against. We have to hold on to our compassion, or what's the point of surviving at all? As the argument reaches its peak, it's Chris who offers a solution. He proposes creating a separate community for the infected, close enough to the Haven for support, far enough to maintain safety. The infected would be given Dr. Chen's treatment and allowed to live out their remaining time in peace, with the understanding that when the time comes, it would voluntarily enter isolation. It's a difficult compromise, but one that most can accept. Over the next few months, the plan is put into action. A new settlement, dubbed New Dawn, is established for the intelligent infected. Dr. Chen splits her time between the two communities, continuing her research and monitoring her patients. Life settles into a new rhythm. Haven and New Dawn coexist, trading resources and knowledge. Families torn apart by the virus are reunited, even if their time together is limited. It's not a perfect solution, but it's one that allows both communities to hold on to their humanity in a world that seems determined to strip it away. But this fragile peace is tested when a new threat emerges. A group of uninfected survivors, hardened by years of fighting the infected, discovers New Dawn. They see the intelligent infected not as people, but as abominations to be eliminated. As this new enemy closes in, the Haven must make a final choice. Do they stand with New Dawn, risking everything to protect those they once considered enemies? Or do they step aside, allowing the destruction of New Dawn to ensure their own survival? In the end, it's not the leaders who make this decision, the people of Haven themselves. Led by Chris and Sarah, they take up arms alongside their infected allies. The battle is fierce, but fighting together, infected and uninfected alike, they drive off the attackers. In the aftermath, as they tend to their wounded and mourn their dead, there's a sense that something fundamental has changed. The line between us and them has blurred. They are all survivors, all human, all fighting against the cruel hand that fate has dealt them. Dr. Chen, watching over this united community, reflects on their journey. Perhaps this is the true cure, she muses. Not a medicine that fixes our bodies, the compassion that heals our souls. And so, dear listeners, we leave the survivors of Haven and New Dawn to face their uncertain future together. Their tale serves as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, our humanity is not defined by the state of our bodies, by the choices we make, and the compassion we show. In this world or any other, the true measure of our character lies not in how we treat those like us, but in how we treat those who are different. For in the end, we are all infected with the human condition, all struggling against the virus of fear and prejudice. Sleep well, and may your own humanity shine bright in the face of whatever darkness you may encounter. Picture, if you will, a world brought to its knees. A planet once teeming with life, now silent and still. This is the backdrop for our tale tonight. A story of survival, fear, and the darkness that lurks not just in the shadows, but in the hearts of men. You're about to enter a realm where hope and horror walk hand in hand. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. Welcome to The Last Survivors. Our story begins in the ruins of what was once a thriving city. 5 individuals, strangers united by circumstance, pick their way through the debris-strewn streets. Meet Sarah, former nurse with kind eyes and steady hands. Mike, an ex-soldier whose vigilant gaze constantly scans for danger. Emily, a college student whose dreams of the future have been replaced by the will to survive. Tom, a retired engineer whose practical mind has become their greatest asset. And Liam, a young boy orphaned by the virus, his innocence a stark contrast to the harsh world around them. For months they've wandered, scavenging for food and supplies, always on guard against the infected who still roam the land. The world outside is a wasteland, filled with echoes of a life that once was. Buildings stand as hollow shells and the air is thick with despair. But today, fate has something different in store for them. As they round a corner, Emily spots something unusual, a metal hatch, half hidden beneath fallen concrete. Tom's eyes light up with recognition. "It's a bunker," he whispers, hope creeping into his voice for the first time in months. With trembling hands, they clear away the debris and pry open the hatch. A rush of stale air greets them, along with the promise of shelter and safety. One by one, they descend into the darkness below, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. What they find is beyond their wildest dreams. The bunker is vast, its shelves stocked with enough food and supplies to last for years. Canned goods, bottled water, medical supplies, all neatly organized and untouched by the ravages of time. Clean water flows from the taps, and generators hum quietly, providing power and light. Feels like a sanctuary, a hidden oasis in a world gone mad. For the first time since the world ended, they allow themselves to relax. Hope, to dream of a future where they can rebuild their lives. They gather around a table, sharing stories and laughter, their spirits lifted by the abundance around them. But as night falls in the windowless bunker, strange things begin to happen. Shadows move when no one's looking. Whispers echo through empty corridors. Each survivor finds themselves plagued by vivid nightmares, reliving their worst memories and deepest fears. Sarah wakes screaming, convinced she can hear the moans of the infected outside the bunker walls. She clutches her pillow, her heart racing, as the echoes of her past haunt her. Mike jumps at every sound, his soldier's instincts telling him they're under attack. The bunker, once a refuge, now feels like a trap. Emily becomes convinced that one of them is infected, eyeing her companions with growing suspicion. "We can't trust anyone," he insists, her voice trembling with fear. "What if one of us has it and doesn't know?" Tom tries to be the voice of reason, but even he can't explain the odd occurrences. Tools go missing, only to reappear in strange places. The lights flicker ominously, plunging them into momentary darkness. Liam, the young boy, starts talking about a new friend who whispers secrets in the dark. As days pass, tensions rise. Paranoia takes hold. What should have been a sanctuary becomes a pressure cooker of fear and suspicion. They turn on each other, accusing, fighting, their unity crumbling in the face of an unseen threat. One evening, as they gather for a meal, the atmosphere is thick with unease. "We need to stick together," Tom urges, trying to calm the rising tempers. "We can't let fear tear us apart." But Mike, his eyes wild with anxiety, shakes his head. "You don't understand. We're not safe here. This place is wrong. I can feel it." As the argument escalates, Liam, who has been unusually quiet, speaks up. "My friend says the bunker is alive. It watches us, wants us to be afraid." The room falls silent. The adults exchange nervous glances, unsure of how to respond. But deep down, they all feel it. The oppressive weight of something sinister lurking just beyond their understanding. That night, Dara has a nightmare. She finds herself back in the hospital where she worked, surrounded by patients gasping for breath, their faces twisted in agony. She wakes up screaming, drenched in sweat, convinced she can hear the moans of the infected outside the bunker wall. Following day, the whispers grow louder, echoing through the corridors. Shadows flicker just out of sight, and the air grows thick with tension. Each survivor is trapped in their own mind, battling the demons that the bunker has awakened. Emily starts to notice strange markings on the walls, symbols that seem to shift and change when she's not looking directly at them. Mike becomes increasingly agitated, convinced that they're under constant surveillance. Tom tries to maintain order, but even his logical mind struggles to explain the inexplicable events unfolding around them. As the days blur together, the line between reality and nightmare becomes increasingly blurred. Bunker, once their salvation, now feels like a living entity, toying with their sanity. Food starts to spoil inexplicably, and the water takes on a strange, metallic taste. The very air seems to pulse with malevolent energy. It's Liam who finally reveals the full truth. His friend, he says, is the bunker itself, or rather, something that lives within its walls, an entity that feeds on fear, growing stronger with each nightmare, each argument, each moment of doubt. It has been manipulating them from the start, amplifying their fears and turning them against each other. In a moment of clarity, they realize the truth. They've escaped one horror only to trap themselves with another. The bunker, their supposed salvation, is alive, and it's hungry. Faced with this terrifying revelation, the survivors must make a choice. Do they stay in the bunker, surrounded by supplies, but slowly driven mad by the entity? Or do they venture back into the dangerous world above, facing the infected and the unknown? As they stand before the open hatch, the outside world beckoning, they realize a fundamental truth. The real threat was never the virus or the infected, or even the mysterious entity in the bunker. It was fear itself, the fear that turns neighbor against neighbor, friend against friend. With this knowledge, they step into the sunlight, leaving the bunker and its horrors behind. They've learned that true survival isn't just about food and shelter. It's about holding on to hope, trust, and humanity in the face of unimaginable darkness. And so, dear listeners, we leave our survivors to face an uncertain future. But they go forward together, stronger for having faced their fears. They walk into the light, ready to confront whatever awaits them in a world that has changed forever. Remember their tale when you find yourself in dark places, real or imagined. For sometimes, the most terrifying monsters are the ones we create in our own mind. This has been The Last Survivors. Sleep well, and may your shelters be free of malevolent entities. For in this shadowy realm between life and death, survival and madness, the line is thinner than you might think. In the barren expanse of a world long forgotten, where the remnants of civilization crumble beneath an unforgiving sky, there exists a place that defies the natural order. A realm where innocence and savagery dance a deadly waltz, and where the lines between victim and oppressor blur like mirages in the desert heat. Tonight, we invite you to journey into the heart of this forsaken land, where children rule and adults fear to tread. Welcome to the tale of the Wasteland Children. Our story begins with Dr. Sarah Reeves, a survivor of the great calamity that reduced the world to ash and ruin. For years, she's traveled the wasteland, offering medical aid to the scattered communities that cling to existence in this harsh new world. But nothing in her experiences has prepared her for what she's about to encounter. It starts with whispers, carried on the toxic wind, tales of a place where children roam free, untouched by the horrors of the adult world. At first, Sarah dismisses these stories as wishful thinking, a desperate attempt to find hope in a hopeless world. But as she hears the same tale in settlement after settlement, she begins to wonder. Curiosity leads her to the edges of a vast, radiation-scarred desert. There she meets an old man, his skin weathered by sun and sorrow. He warns her of the dangers that lie ahead. The children, he rasps, his eyes wide with fear. They're not what you think. They're changed, dangerous. No adult who's gone to find them has ever returned. But Sarah, driven by a mixture of scientific curiosity and a deep-seated need to protect the vulnerable, pushes on. For days, she travels across the scorching sands, her supplies dwindling, her hope fading. Just as she's about to give up, she sees it, a shimmer on the horizon that resolves into the ruins of a small town. As she approaches, Sarah notices something odd. The buildings, while weathered, show signs of repair. Gardens flourish in the harsh environment, fed by an ingenious irrigation system. And there, darting between the structures, are children. But these are not the carefree youths of the old world. Their movements are quick, furtive. Their eyes, when they glance her way, hold a wariness that no child should possess. And when they spot her, they vanish like ghosts, leaving Sarah alone in the eerie silence. "Hello?" she calls out, her voice echoing off empty buildings. "I'm here to help. I'm a doctor." For a long moment, there's no response. Then from the shadows, a figure emerges. It's a boy, no more than 14, but his eyes hold the weight of centuries. He carries himself with an authority that makes Sarah instinctively wary. "I am Eli," the boy says, his voice surprisingly deep. "Leader of Eden. What brings you to our home, outsider?" Sarah explains her mission, her desire to help. Eli listens impassively, then nods. "You may enter Eden," he declares, "but know this, the rules of the old world do not apply here. In Eden, children reign." As Eli leads her into the heart of the settlement, Sarah is amazed by what she sees. Children of all ages work together with surprising efficiency, tending crops, repairing buildings, even manufacturing simple tools. But there's something off about the scene. Tension in the air that sets Sarah's nerves on edge. She's shown to a small house that will serve as her clinic. As word spreads of her arrival, children begin to come for treatment. Sarah is horrified by what she finds. Many bear scars from untreated injuries. Others show signs of malnutrition or radiation sickness. But it's their eyes that truly unsettle her. Eyes that have seen too much, that hold secrets no child should bear. As days pass, Sarah begins to piece together the dark history of Eden. She learns of the great dying, when a mysterious illness swept through the adult population, leaving the children to fend for themselves. She hears whispered tales of the culling, and the strongest children, led by Eli, seized control and established their new order. But it's not until she treats a young girl named Lily, Sarah uncovers the full, horrifying truth. Lily, feverish and delirious, speaks of things that chill Sarah to her core. Of adults locked away in hidden bunkers, subjected to cruel experiments, children forced to prove their loyalty through unspeakable acts. And at the center of it all, Eli, charismatic leader whose word is law. Shaken by these revelations, Sarah begins to plan her escape, but as she soon discovers, leaving Eden is not so simple. The settlement is surrounded by deadly traps and patrolled by vigilant sentries. And Eli, she realizes, has no intention of letting his new doctor leave. As Sarah searches for a way out, she forms a bond with a group of younger children who haven't yet been fully indoctrinated into Eden's brutal ways. Among them is Max, a clever boy who dreams of the world beyond the wasteland. Together, they begin to formulate a plan. But Eli is always watching. He senses the threat Sarah poses to his authority, the dangerous ideas of the old world that she brings. He decides she must be eliminated before she can undo all he's built. The night of the new moon, when darkness blankets Eden, Eli makes his move. Sarah is awakened by Max, urgency in his young voice. "They're coming for you," he whispers. "We have to go now." What follows is a heart-pounding chase through the darkened streets of Eden. Sarah and her young allies dodge patrols, navigate treacherous traps, all while leading a group of adults, survivors of Eli's cruel experiments, to freedom. As they near the edge of the settlement, they're confronted by Eli and his most loyal followers. Young Tyrant's eyes blaze with fury as he faces the doctor who dared to challenge his rule. "You don't understand," Eli snarls. "The old world is dead. Adults failed us. Only through our way can humanity survive." Sarah, standing tall despite her fear, durst. "At what cost, Eli? You've turned these children into soldiers, stripped them of their innocence. That's not survival. It's just another form of death." For a moment, doubt flickers in Eli's eyes, but then his resolve hardens. He raises his hand, ready to order his followers to attack, but before he can speak, a voice rings out. "No more." It's Lily, the girl whose feverish ramblings revealed the truth. He steps forward, facing Eli. "We've lived by your rules, done terrible things in the name of survival, but Sarah's right. This isn't living. Time for a change." One by one, other children step forward, standing with Lily. Eli's power, built on fear and manipulation, begins to crumble before Sarah's eyes. In the end, it's not violence that resolves the standoff, but words. Sarah, drawing on every ounce of compassion and understanding she possesses, reaches out to Eli. She sees past the hardened exterior to the scared, hurt child beneath. With gentle words and a promise of a better way, she begins to break through the walls he's built around his heart. As the sun rises on a new day, Eden is transformed. The hidden adults are freed, reunited with their children. Sarah, with the help of those who choose to stay, begins the long process of healing. Not just bodies, but minds and souls scarred by years of trauma. Eli, stripped of his power but offered forgiveness, struggles to find his place in this new order. It's a long road ahead, filled with challenges and setbacks. For the first time in years, there's hope in Eden. And so, dear listeners, we leave the Wasteland children to their journey of recovery and rediscovery. Their tale serves as a stark reminder of the resilience of the human spirit, but also of the dangers that arise when we abandon our humanity in the name of survival. In this world, or any other, the choices we make in our darkest hours define us. And sometimes, the most powerful act of rebellion is to hold on to our compassion, even when the world tells us to let it go. Sleep well, and may your own inner child find peace in whatever wasteland you may face. We hope you enjoyed this chilling tale. If it sent shivers down your spine, give us a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. What was your favorite part? Don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky and remember, sometimes the darkest shadows hide the most terrifying secret.